The hero party has just managed to seal the demon lord away, but even though this is a monumental victory, unless they can defeat him once and for all, the world will always be in danger of being destroyed. They all feel guilty for not being able to complete their mission, but their leader tells them that there's still hope because he is sure that someday in the future a new hero will appear to carry on their legacy and finally finish the demon lord off for good. Several years later, at the A-rank party, Thunder Pike is in the middle of a public dungeon raid, and while the two melee fighters attack, the magic users begin casting their spells, and thanks to the buffs from the party's supporter, Yuke, they are able to take a Hydra down in record time. Individually, the members of Thunder Pike are already really strong, but when they work together, they are nearly unbeatable, which is part of the reason why they have so many fans. However, while they may look like the perfect team on the surface, it turns out they don't really get along as well as you'd think. In fact, after the stream ended, the Red Mage Yuke tells everyone on the team that he is quitting Thunder Pike effective immediately. The party leader, Simone, asks him why he wants to leave, so Yuke explains that he isn't getting a fair cut of their reward money. The money he received today is so little that he may have to start taking out payday loans, and that's a situation he doesn't want to be in. Simone tries to justify Yuku's low pay by claiming that Yuke isn't contributing enough to the party, and Barry chimes in to point out that Yuke never actually engages in any battles. All he ever does is burn through their items' durability with his pointless enchantments. Yuke can't believe Barry would call his enchantments useless, but Barry isn't the only one who feels that way. The only one who actually thinks Yuke is useful is Jamie, but that's just because he's good at setting up their streams. Camilla tells him that if he wants to be paid more, then he has to be more active as a member of the team, but Yuke doesn't think she has the right to say that since she's basically a healer and Yuke is always protecting her in battle. The fact that they don't value the work he does is exactly why he wants to quit the party, but Simon asks him if he's really sure he can manage on his own if he leaves. He says the only reason Yuke is even B rank is because they are childhood friends and Simon did him a favor by letting him join Thunder Pike, and even if he leaves, they'll be just fine without him. Since they clearly doesn't think Yuke deserves to be paid well, Yuke definitely isn't going to stick around. Yuke has wasted the last 5 years of his life supporting this party, and they would never have gotten this far without his help, but the others still all think he's useless, so they won't miss him at all. Now that Yuke has officially quit Thunder Pike, he heads to the guild receptionist to ask if there's any work available. She's surprised that a famous adventurer like him is here to look for a gig, so she asks him if something happened with Thunder Pike, and Yuke explains that he quit. The receptionist doesn't seem that surprised, since things like this happen all the time, so she hands Yuke a form to fill out so she can give him a new party. Once he's done filling out the form, he hands it to the receptionist, but just then the girl comes running up to him for a big hug. The girl's name is Marina, and she used to be one of Yuke's students back when he taught preliminary adventurer classes half a year ago, and Yuke is glad she's doing all right. She's curious about why Yuke is here, so she asks him, and he tells her that he's currently looking for a new party since he recently left Thunder Pike. Marina doesn't even let him finish his sentence, because if he's looking for a new party, then she would love to have her beloved teacher in hers. Yuke agrees for her proposition, so a few minutes later he is seated with Marina and the rest of her party members so they can discuss his joining. Silk loves the idea of Yuke joining their party, but she is surprised that an experienced adventurer like him wants to join their D-rank party. Yuke is currently B-rank, so he could probably get into a much better party, but he doesn't mind being in a D-rank party. And to be honest, he actually prefers it this way. Back when he was in Thunder Pike, they would always take on high-level missions, so Yuke would have to buy a ton of magic items to prepare, which left him in constant debt. That's why he wants to take it easy for a while, and just deal with some low-level quests instead. Since Marina, Silk, and Rain are all on board with the idea, Yuke officially joins their party, and their first mission together is to collect magic iron ore from the Pinto Mine dungeon. It's been a long time since Yuke felt excited to go on a mission like this, and it definitely brings back a lot of old memories from when he was starting out as an adventurer. Yuke recalls that this dungeon has a lot of magic ore veins on the 6th floor, and Silk tells him he is correct, but they were hoping to avoid fighting the 5th floor boss, so Yuke suggests they should start on the 4th floor instead. As they enter the dungeon, Marina takes the lead and uses a stick to check for any traps that may have been set, and Yuke is so proud because she's doing it exactly how he taught her. But for now, he asks her to let him take the lead since he has a more efficient method. Marina doesn't understand what he means since their party doesn't have a scout or thief to detect the traps. But while that may be true, Yuke has a magic item that should be useful in this situation. It's a detection lamp, and thanks to a special type of oil, it illuminates traps, so they can spot them just like a scout would. The lamp really is useful, but Silk asks if it's okay for Yuke to be using it since special oil sounds really expensive. And yes, it normally is, but Yuke made this oil with his alchemy, so it didn't cost him much. The party continues walking down the corridor while carefully avoiding all the traps, until eventually Yuke stops everyone because he can sense something up ahead. He warns the others and tells them that they should prepare for a fight, so they all rush in together and are confronted by a group of boggles. Silk decides to take the initiative and fires the first shot to take one of the boggles down, while Marina runs in to handle the rest. As she does this, Yuke casts overlapping physical enchantments on her so she can fight better. And at the same time, he casts a debuff on the baubles to trip them up. While the baubles are disoriented, Marina goes in for her attack, and in one fluid motion, she's able to cut both of them in half, something even she is surprised by. She turns around to ask Yuke if that feeling she just experienced was his magic, so Yuke confirms that he have cast 3 types of enchantment on Marina to help with her fight. Rain can't believe Yuke was able to cast 3 enchantments at once, and on top of that, he managed to do it with no incantation, but Yuke doesn't think it was all that impressive, so he just says they should keep moving. As they continue through the mine, he asks the girls about their usual dungeon exploration routine, so Marina proudly explains that they always take a break after each floor and check their equipment, just like he taught them to do. Since that's the case, Yuke suggests that they should rest a bit before they continue. After their break, Marina and the others check all their equipment for damage, and everything seems to be in working order, so they are ready to continue their mission and head down to the next floor. On the second floor of the dungeon, the group is suddenly ambushed by a group of undead miners, and the only way to get rid of them is for Rain to use holy magic, so everyone needs to protect her while she uses her chant. Marina and Silk plan to handle the defense, but Yuke tells them he has this covered, so he casts a blessing of light on all of them. And while it won't kill the undead miners, it does stop them from coming any closer, so it's a good defensive measure. Eventually, Rain finishes the holy light spell and uses it to eradicate the undead, and once they are safe, Marina begins praising Rain for a job well done. Yuke praises her as well, since there aren't many people who can use light magic on the scale that Rain just did, but doing that probably drained a ton of her mana, so he casts Refresh Mana to help her recover. Rain can't believe Yuke can use Refresh Mana, since that's a really rare skill. It completely restores the mana of whomever it is cast on, and having that skill alone would make Yuke insanely valuable to any party that works with him, but Yuke thinks she's exaggerating a little because he only learned Refreshed Mana as a way to compensate for having an obscure job like a red mage, although it was really difficult for him to learn it. Afterwards, the group continues walking down the path, and as they go, Yuke begins pouring a liquid on the ground. Silk asks him what he's doing, so Yuke explains that he is pouring holy water over their footprints in order to stop undead monsters from following them. Silk is worried and asks if it's really okay for him to waste his holy water like that since it's really expensive, but Yuke tells her it's fine since once again he made this himself. The group is in shock that Yuke is able to make holy water even though he isn't a priest, but he has a special method for it. By purifying the ashes left behind by the undead when they are defeated, Yuke is able to process it into holy water, and the ashes he got from the undead miners will be more than enough to make up for the amount of holy water he's using. By the time they finally make it to the 3rd floor, Yuke suggests that they should take another break since they'll begin mining from this point forward, and since they haven't eaten for a while, he whips out some cooking utensils from his magic bag and says he will make them a meal. Magic bags aren't that rare, but this is Rain's first time seeing a magic bag in person, so she's really excited. Yuke puts some sausage and eggs in a pan, and while that's cooking up, he pulls out a special pot. The girls watch as he taps on the side of the pot and it instantly fills up, so Yuke explains that the pot is a rare artifact that he found in a royal palace ruin. It basically fills up with a random soup every time you use it, so it's really handy to have. The girls are really grateful to Yuke, since this is the first time they've gotten to have such a good meal while in the middle of a dungeon mission, but when Silk takes a closer look at the food, she realizes that it has mana radiating out of it. She asks Yuke about it, but he tells her there's nothing special about the food since all he did was prepare it with lots of love. His alchemy skills might have accidentally enchanted the food, however, it shouldn't be a problem. The group eventually makes it to the 4th floor of the dungeon and are confronted by a rock lizard, but as the monster charges at them, Yuke casts a slow spell on it, so it practically freezes in place. Marina then rushes forward to attack, and normally she wouldn't risk it, but since Yuku's enchantments have buffed her strength and stamina, she decides to try using her magic blade ability, and with it, she's able to slice the rock lizard's head off in one go. Once the fight is over, Marina is totally exhausted since Magic Blade uses up a ton of her mana, but Yuku encourages her to keep using it as much as possible, because eventually her body will get used to it, but for now, he casts Refresh Mana to help her recover. Anyway, there are a lot of magic ores here, so Yuku begins whining with the girls, and after a little while they've managed to gather a ton of magic ores. Yuku asks if this is enough to fulfill the requirements of their quest, but Silk says they actually need a bit more. Unfortunately, there are no more magic ores on this floor, so their only option now is to defeat the 5th floor boss and go down to the 6th floor to gather the remaining ores. The girls don't like the sound of that since the 5th floor boss is called the Novice Crusher Steel Crab, and they aren't sure they can survive against something like that, but Yuku tells them they don't need to worry since he will do his best to handle a boss on his own. A little while later, they arrive at the boss's room, but before they head in, Yuku pulls out a camera artifact. Rain recognizes the artifact and asks if Yuku plans to livestream his battle, but he was actually just going to record instead. He always records his battles so he can study his mistakes later. If he's going to be recording anyway, Marina asks him to make it a live stream since she thinks it will be a lot of fun. Yuku is fine with live streaming his fight, but while he's setting it up, he realizes he doesn't know the name of this party. He asked him, but Silk tells him they haven't actually thought of a party name yet, and in fact they aren't even officially registered yet. Since that's the case, he asks them if they got any good ideas for a team named, so Marina thinks for a second and comes up with the name Clover, specifically a 4-leaf clover to represent their 4 members, and everyone really likes the name, so from now on they shall be known as Clover. Just then, Yuku realizes that this is going to be a party's first live stream, and he'd feel bad if he was the only one who got a spotlight, so he asks the others if they want to help him fight the boss, but they all tell him that it's fine for him to handle it solo. In that case, Yuku isn't going to hold back, so he casts Great Blink Shadow and Protector Shield buffs on himself, and then enters the boss room. The steel crab awakens and immediately tries to strike Yuku, but he uses his speed buffs to dodge, and once he's out of the crab's range, he begins casting tons of debuff spells on it, and once the crab is sufficiently weakened, he casts a gravity spell to crush it against the floor. With this, the steel crab boss has been defeated and it didn't even take him 1 minute to do it, so Yuku is pleased with his performance. He then ends the stream and Marina runs up to hug him for being so amazing, but she's hugging him a little too hard, so the others ask her to let go before Yuku ends up in a wheelchair. After making sure his back is fine, Yuku tells everyone that they should bring the steel crab's body back to the guild, so they can sell the parts. He stores the entire things in his magic bag, and that's a huge help since they never would have been able to carry it back by themselves. So far, Yuku has been indispensable to their party, but Silk doesn't think it's fair for them to constantly be relying on Yuku like this, so Yuku suggests that next time they have a boss battle, everyone can participate so they'll gain some experience. The girls like the sound of that, but for now they still have to open the treasure chest they get for killing the floor boss, and when they do, they find a ton of magic ores so it looks like they won't have to mine anymore after all. That brings the episode to an end. Thanks for watching. Want next part? Subscribe the channel and turn on notification bell.